Hey everyone, this is the Wealth Building Educator here with another video. I'm excited about this one because we are talking about everyone's favorite financial guru, Mr. Dave Ramsey himself. Today, he made a post about things that people should be investing in and things that people should not be investing in. And it really created some shockwaves amongst the financial gurus and, YouTubers and Instagram individuals. So I just wanted to kind of discuss that because obviously people were saying things like Dave Ramsey has no clue what he's talking about. Dave Ramsey needs to retire and things like that. So just to be transparent, my wife and I dug ourselves out of an $85,000 hole by going through Financial Peace University. So we've read Total Money Makeover. We've gone through his 9-week course. So we have used his methods in the past to dig ourselves out of debt and to begin building wealth. I'm a firm believer that Dave Ramsey is a really good individual to get your start. So if you are one of those people who struggle with debt and you are not necessarily responsible with your money, he is the person. He's the exact person that you need to get yourself in line, to dig yourself out of that hole and to start your journey towards financial prosperity. That being said, once you get to a certain point in your journey and once you are able to control your spending habits and you get your, credit card usage and things like that under control, then you kind of graduate to other gurus. I'm a JL Collins guy. Some people like to use other methods, but I'm a true believer that personal finance is personal. So whatever your method is, as long as it's working for you, that's great. But let me get back to Dave Ramsey himself. So he made this post, and I'm actually going to share the post with you that he made. And I'm just going to kind of go through, line item and give my opinion on these things. Obviously, I am not necessarily a financial advisor. I am a financial coach. I've coached many people and helped people get out of debt and help people, work towards building their own financial legacy. I used to be licensed at 6 and 63 and those things back 15, 20 years ago, but I choose not to do that anymore. But I just enjoy coaching people and helping people to realize their potential as far as wealth building is concerned. So let's go ahead and hop into this. What I say is my opinion, but if you search the internet, you will see a lot of people will agree with some of the things I'm saying, and they won't necessarily agree with Dave. So let's get it. Okay, so here we go. How to invest your money. And this is straight from Dave Ramsey. This is his post. He said you should be investing in mutual funds, spread equally in 4 categories: growth, growth in income, aggressive growth, and international. So on the surface, I agree that you should be investing your money in funds, right? So I truly believe that it's not necessarily as important what you invest in as much as it is important that you actually invest. Obviously, you want to invest in the right funds, in the right things. However, if somebody came to me and they said, "Hey, Rashad, I'm investing this money in these mutual funds right here," I would never beat them up and say, "Hey, you should not be investing in those funds." We will sit down and look at them together and try to determine what their time horizon is and try to determine what their objectives are. And that's how we will decide what I think they should be investing in. And if they have any further questions or if they don't necessarily trust what I'm telling them, at that point, we might say, "Hey, maybe you want to go to a fiduciary advisor or something like that." So that's at that point. But when I see people that are making that attempt to invest, I'm excited about that. So I don't necessarily beat them upside the head at what they're investing in. I'm more excited about the fact that they are putting money to the side to invest. So if I see somebody that's investing in mutual funds, I'm excited about that. However, I will tell them you really need to look at index funds. You can get index funds with so many different companies. My favorite is Vanguard, and my favorite index fund is VTSAX. I also am a huge advocate for Fidelity. They have really good index funds as well. And then Charles Schwab, there's so many different companies out there that have stellar index funds that anybody can invest in and build wealth that way. The difference between a mutual fund and an index fund, well, first of all, mutual funds are actively managed. Index funds are passively managed. So an index fund basically tracks an index and tries to match that index. On the other hand, mutual funds try to beat that index. So obviously, if you're actively managed fund, you have a manager who is trying to beat the index, you're going to pay higher fees for that particular fund. So why would you want to pay higher fees for a fund when you could just track the index and pay much lower fees? So for instance, VTSAX has an expense ratio of 0.04%. Some of these actively managed mutual funds have an expense ratio of almost 1%. They might even have front end loads of 5%. They might have back end loads. So my thing is, why your money has to work so much harder the higher your fees that you have, in that particular fund. So I'm a huge advocate of index funds, and I don't know why Dave Ramsey does not speak on index funds much. He always seems to speak on mutual funds, and a lot of people make the argument that he pushes mutual funds so hard because of his endorsed local providers, and he probably will get a kickback when people inquire about what funds he's invested in, and then he refers them to the endorsed local provider, and that's how he gets kickback. So I don't know how true that is, but that is the assumption, and a lot of people on the internet say that because you rarely ever hear him speak about index funds, and most people will tell you that the index fund is a much more superior product than an actively managed mutual fund. So let's move on to the next one. So I disagree with Dave Ramsey there where it says invest in mutual funds. I would say invest in index funds. If you are investing in mutual funds, I'm gonna give you a high five and tell you that you probably should look at index funds so that you can have more of your money. All right, let's go to the next one. Invest in real estate. Now, had he stopped at just invest in real estate, I would absolutely be 100% on board with him there. Who does not want to invest in real estate, and who does not want to promote people investing in real estate? Well, it's the next part that really hit me and a lot of other people the wrong way. And that says paid for in full. So most people I know cannot pay for real estate in full. I have an unbelievably low mortgage rate. And if I said it on YouTube, most people would accuse me of being a liar. So I won't say it, but I did get a 15-year mortgage. I didn't put any money down. I didn't pay any closing costs. I don't pay PMI or none of those junk fees. So every month I have so much of my money going to the principal of my mortgage. So now we have over $200,000 in equity. But let's assume that in 2015, rather than buying our house with zero money down and keeping that money in the bank, let's suppose that my wife and I decided, hey, we're going to listen to Dave Ramsey's advice. We are going to buy a home when we have the cash to pay for it in full. How long would that have taken us to get $215,000 cash in the bank to pay cash for a house? And I don't know if any of you all have heard, even if we were able to get $215,000 in our account to purchase a home from 2015 to 2021, well, that $215,000 is not going to buy the house that we currently have now. Our house now, rather than selling for $215,000, will probably be selling for $350,000, $375,000. So had we listened to Dave Ramsey's advice and paid for a house in full, we would be buying a house that's probably half the size of the house that we're in now. So I completely disagree with his advice where it says paid for in full. Now, I'm an advocate of trying to pay your mortgage off and getting a 15-year mortgage. And people can argue with me about that. A lot of people say get the longer mortgage and invest the difference in index funds. And I totally understand that line of thinking. I won't argue either way. I'm going to enjoy having a paid for house that might be paid for, in half of the 15-year mortgage that I have, and I can deal with that. We have plenty of other investments going out right now to the point where I don't feel that, paying off this low interest mortgage will be a detriment to me. I think it'll provide some stability for my family, and I just don't see an issue with paying it off. But to tell somebody to pay your mortgage off in full, or to pay your house in full, it just appears to me like he's advocating for paying cash for a house, which if you can afford to do that, then cool. But probably 99% of the people, or 99.5% of the people out there don't have the ability to do that. So the next one that I see here, don't invest in single stocks. Now, I can understand where he's coming from here. I'm looking at it right now, and single stocks, obviously, there are people out there who lose money doing day trading, and there are people who lose money investing in single stocks. I'm not a big fan of investing in single stocks as a retirement plan or anything like that, but there are some people out there who might pick 5 to 10 individual stocks and they might ride it out. These are products that they use every day, products that have, been tried and true, and it works for them. At the same time, I'm not a fan of focusing so much on single stocks. So for instance, those people who invested in companies that they work for, and that was the 100% of their retirement was in those single stocks. Obviously, that's not a smart investment. However, at the same time, I do believe if you are very well diversified with your typical or normal retirement account, so you have a little bit of money to play around with, I have no problem with investing in single stocks. For instance, I just bought some single stocks through Rivian. I got it through the IPO and initial price offering. If, for those who don't know what IPO means, I bought some single stocks, and I'm also waiting on the other IPO of another up and coming company. And I do believe that there's a strong possibility that those companies will explode and I will receive a really significant return on my money. At the same time, I invest enough to where it could be a significant growth, but at the same time, I don't invest too much to where if I lose it all, it's not a lot of my portfolio. So I kind of play around with some single stocks, and it's just enough to where if I lose it all, it literally doesn't impact my bottom line much at all. So I totally disagree with Dave where he says do not invest in single stocks. It's too much of his advice is in absolutes. What's wrong with people just playing around a little bit? So I disagree with that advice. Next, it says Bitcoin or any cryptocurrency. So let's suppose, a year and a half ago, someone wanted to invest in Dogecoin and they took Dave Ramsey's advice. They saw this post and they said, oh, Dave Ramsey, the multimillionaire financial guru, says not to invest in cryptocurrency. So they choose not to throw $1,000 or they choose not to throw $50 in a Dogecoin. Well, they would have missed out on quite a bit of a return. So I also believe that when you look at Bitcoin and these other cryptocurrencies, you need to have an intelligent mindset when you approach this. Just like I said with single stocks, you need to understand that you set aside a certain amount of money to invest particularly in cryptocurrency, and it needs to be an amount of money that you can afford to lose. So it's kind of like gambling money. I'm not saying you go out there and you play the lottery knowing that you will lose. No, I'm saying that you go in there, you take a chance. There's a good chance that $50 may stay 50. It might turn into $10, but who knows if you have that next big time coin that might go from $50 to $50,000. So I totally disagree with Dave here. You need to intelligently spend on any cryptocurrency. And it needs to be, to me, a very small part of your portfolio. I know some people that say they invest 3% of their portfolio in crypto. I know some people that have gone up to 7 to 8%. Either way it goes, that's not going to hurt them if those amounts disappear. So disagree with Dave once again. Whole life insurance policies. I 100% agree with Dave here. So I have always been a believer that you buy term insurance and invest the difference. So if any of my family comes to me, if any of my friends come to me and they ask me for advice about life insurance, I'm going to say to invest in term life insurance, to buy term life insurance and invest the difference. Buy term because it's so much cheaper than whole life. I'm just not a fan of whole life at all. I don't want to necessarily get into the particulars of the differences between term and whole life. I just know that whole life insurance is super expensive and term life insurance is super cheap. We can get like $1 million, depending on your health, $1 million as a guy for $60, $70 a month, as opposed to paying hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of dollars a month for half of that or a fourth of that. So I'm not a fan of whole life insurance, but at the same time, personal finance is personal. So if you analyze things and you do your research, and as a family, you decide whole life insurance is something that you want to do, and you can live with the negative consequences or the financial impact that it will have on you, then cool. But I just don't believe in mixing investments with insurance whatsoever. So I agree with Dave 1000% here. I would never invest in whole life insurance, and I would never allow a loved one to invest in whole life insurance if they come to me and ask that question. Let's go to annuities. So annuities is one of those things. It's like an insurance policy where I guess you pay up front, you pay a large amount, and then they pay you your money back. And I agree with Dave here. I would not invest in annuities just from what I've always known about them. I would rather just do index funds myself and because on average, those index funds are going to be any rate of return that you get with the whole life and with the annuity. So I agree with Dave. So these last two, I think, according to my standards and what I believe in, the whole life insurance policies and the annuities, I would not invest in them, and I wouldn't advise anybody that I know or love to invest in them. Let's look at bonds. So the thing about bonds is that when interest rates of the market rise, then those interest rates of the bonds are gonna decrease, right? So we have super low interest rates in general right now with stocks, or with the market. We have super low interest rates. So the only way they really could go is up. So when the interest rates go up, what do we think is gonna happen to the interest rates of bonds? So we kind of have to look at it like using the bonds as a hedge against certain risks as we get closer to retirement. So for instance, if you're looking at these retirement funds, these target retirement funds, and let's suppose you look at a retirement 2030 fund, those are going to be more heavy in bonds than a retirement 2060 fund, because the 2060 fund assumes you have 39, 40 years until you actually retire. So it knows you have a long time on the horizon, so you could take more risk, and you're going to invest in almost 100% stocks, and maybe like 95% stocks, as opposed to a 2030 target fund that is going to be a little more heavy in bonds compared to the 2060, because it's supposed to be a little more safe, because they don't want to have as much volatility in your portfolio. So I don't necessarily disagree with Dave here. I think that it's really a comfort level. I mean, I'm not the biggest fan of bonds, but I understand why people do invest in it. And if you just want your money to be more stable and you are approaching retirement, why would you tell somebody to not invest in bonds? I mean, any financial advisor, anytime you invest, one of the first things they do is have you take like a risk assessment profile test or something like that gauges where you are to give recommendations for the kind of funds that you should be investing in. So if you have a very low tolerance for volatility, you should be investing in more bonds. Me, I'm 100% comfortable in investing in VTSAX, even though I'm a shade over 40 years old. I know I have a long time on the horizon when I'm actually going to need to pull any money from our retirement account. So disagree there, but I understand the line of thinking. Bonds isn't going to give you a big return for your money. However, it will provide some stability that stocks won't necessarily provide. Micro investing. I don't know why Dave has an issue with micro investing. Typically what that is like being able to buy partial shares. So for instance, M1, if you go in with $10, you'll be able to buy a partial share. So let's say VTSAX is $115 per share, and you don't have $115 to buy an entire share. Let's say you go at $10, you can buy about 1/11 of a share, something like that, 1/10 of a share. So I don't see why he has an issue with micro investing. I don't understand it. I don't understand his logic. I would love to hear his logic for why he would have a problem with that. But if we're telling people to invest often and invest early, and let's suppose they are out of debt or whatever, or they want to use a app like Acorns or one of these apps to where they can just put a small chunk in at a time. What's the issue with that? I mean, I wish when I was 10 years old that I could put $1 a week in or something. I don't know how big my account will be now. So I don't know where Dave is coming up with this stuff. Wow. Okay. Real estate investment trust. I disagree with him there. I know that some people actually have about 10% of their portfolio in the REIT. So I don't know why he would have an issue with that. That's basically, from my understanding, it's like an index fund in real estate. So some people actually prefer to invest in those rather than actual tangible real estate itself. It's just like an index. It's an index fund, and it tracks the index, and you get whatever dividends you may have. It's based on the market. So I don't see why he would have an issue with that. It's actually probably a little more safe to some people than actually investing in real estate. They don't have to really deal with the headache of being a landlord and dealing with tenants. So I don't see why he would have an issue with that. This was definitely one of the weirdest ones, was ETFs. So ETFs are very similar to index funds. So for instance, let's look at my favorite index fund, which is VTSAX. And then let's look at its ETF version, which is VTI. VTI is one of those funds or ETF is a fund where you can basically get in a market by purchasing one share. So if it's $400 a share, you can buy one share of an ETF or of VTI or whatever, VOO, and you can purchase them throughout the day, as opposed to an index fund where you'll get that price at the end of the day, and you don't need to buy an entire share. You can buy basically partial shares. So if you put $1,000 in, you will get a particular number of shares, and it'll be partial. You might get like 6.2 shares of VTSAX, but if you're buying straight from Vanguard, you're getting an ETF, and the ETF is, let's say, $200, and you put $1,000 in, you were getting 5 of those, but they won't let you get like 5.5 shares of the ETF. So, and like I said, it's priced throughout the day. It varies, but they're actually priced better than the index funds as far as the expense ratio. So for VTI, the expense ratio is 0.03%. For VTSAX, it is 0.04%. It's not really that much of a difference in price, but it actually is priced better than an index fund. So I just don't understand why Dave would speak out against ETFs. That was probably the most bizarre thing that he said not to invest in. A lot of these things I can understand the rationale behind it, but ETFs, I could not understand it at all. I really would love to hear his line of thinking for that. Like, I'm kind of blown away by that one. Let's go to the next one. CDs, certificates of depression, I believe is what he calls it, certificates of deposit. So I used to be a teller in college, and to me, CDs were a joke. I would rather just put my money under a mattress, or I would rather just put my money in one of these so-called high yield savings accounts. I mean, I've never seen a CD that was worth it. Your money is locked up for 12 months or 72 months, 84 months at very, very low rate of return. And we all know what inflation looks like now. So I don't know if there are any CDs that come close to even matching inflation. Like, so I completely agree with him there. Like, I would never invest in any CDs or anything like that. But hey, let me go back to bonds. So if I'm not mistaken, I think there's like a 7.12% bond out there right now. And I can't remember the website. I'll have to go look it up. And if I find it, I will put it in the comments. But a lot of people are talking about that. And I think it's like a 7-year bond or something. I can't remember, but that's a really good investment. It's definitely a good hedge against inflation. And that's what a lot of people are using it for. But if you watch this video and you know what I'm talking about, please post that in the comments below. But hey, I really appreciate everybody for tuning in. If you had the opportunity to tune in here, I don't have any particular personal issues with Dave or anything. Like I said, I think that Dave Ramsey has done a phenomenal job of helping millions and millions of people get out of debt and stay out of debt. That's where my advice, or where my love affair would actually probably stop with Dave. Just, he's gonna get you on the right path. He's gonna get you out of debt with the tough love or whatever. But after that, I don't know, you need to really look at somebody else to figure out how to do your investments. But that advice he gave, for the most part, like, it is so mixed. Some of it I think is great advice, and it's not just me, it's other people too. So some of it is great advice, some of it is horrible advice. So I can see how a newbie who's just getting into the game would be super confused. Like, what do I do? So if I trust Dave here, I'm gonna trust him here. And some of that advice, I just don't think is good advice. So nothing personal against Dave. Just, hey, y'all keep doing your thing. Remember that personal finance is 100% personal. If you have any questions, feel free to comment in the video. Check out my other videos. I really do hope that if you are watching my videos, I'm adding some sort of value to your life, and I'm helping you understand that if I can do it, if my family can do it, if we could be successful financially, if we could work toward being millionaires, you could do it yourself. If I can do it, anybody can do it. All right. Hey, I appreciate you for continuing to rock with me. If you have not subscribed to the channel yet, please do so. Please like and share this video and continue to spread the word. I appreciate you all. Have a phenomenal day. Thank you.